Let's get into a aortic valve 101. That's what last week's Monday was all about. And again, for these medical posts, we have our third year medical student, Adam, and our fourth year Duke providing us with all of this information that they're able to source out there in the medical internet. And let's get into it. Okay. So, uh, this one is from Adam. We actually got a chance to meet him when we went to the Aortic Disease Awareness Walk hosted by Aortic Bridge, although there was no walk because it was like tropical storm rains that day, which is totally fine. We made it through. We ate a lot, and yeah, and it was great. But we're gonna talk about aortic valves, okay? So as he says, picture this: the right side of your heart just got all of the venous non-oxygenated blood from the body. It effortlessly, I love the way he describes things, it effortlessly carries it to the lungs, which give it a beautiful supply of oxygen and feeds it to the left side of the heart. Your left ventricle is now full of oxygen rich blood, and now it's time to pump all of this blood out of the heart into the rest of the body. And what do you think that goes through? That's going to go through the valve and the aorta. Here's a great picture of our hearts. Okay, there we go. And this is again where the aortic valve plays in. See, there's your aortic valve, and all that oxygenated blood came over to here and is now going to go up here and go everywhere down below, behind the heart, and to the entire body. All right. Think of it as a gateway between your heart's left ventricle and your body's aorta. So the door from the heart to the rest of the body, that would be your aortic valve. And most aortic valves are made up of 3 thin leaflets, which we did talk about in prior posts. And these leaflets are called cusps. These cusps, they open and close to allow the blood to flow in one direction. Okay, here we are. There's your normal aortic valve and your 3 leaflets. And this is what it looks like when it's closed. It goes right here. This is what it looks like open and closed. Okay, blood comes from here, goes through the aortic valve and into the aorta. When your heart pumps, the aortic valve leaflets, they open, allowing the oxygenated blood to flow from the left ventricle into the aorta and throughout your entire body, providing energy and oxygen to your muscles and your organs. And after the heartbeat, the cusps close tightly, preventing blood from returning to the heart. Let's talk about some of the diseases that can happen to the aortic valve. Now, there are a few things that can happen from the day you're born, which would be a bicuspid, unicuspid, quadcuspid, I suppose. When you have more than 3 leaflets or less than 3 leaflets, that would be considered a congenital heart defect because this is something you're born with. It's not something you can catch, although they're realizing that they believe that bicuspid would be potentially hereditary. So that's something to think about too. But these would all be diseases that can affect your heart and your valve. Okay, so aortic stenosis. We hear this a lot. What is aortic stenosis? As we get older, calcium and fat deposits along our blood vessels and our organs. It's just what happens. Just what happens. Probably from all the different things we eat, pick up in our life, lack of activity, what have you. But in aortic valves, the calcification causes it to narrow and causes it to harden, making blood flow more restricted between the heart and the aorta. The heart now has to pump harder and could cause symptoms such as chest pain, dizziness, like if your brain doesn't get enough blood. And in some severe cases, it can cause heart failure. So that would be aortic stenosis. Here's a picture of it. You have a healthy heart beating, valves opening. Okay. Now, when you have stenosis, the valve can't actually open fully. That aortic valve is right here, right here. Here it is open, nice and full. When you have stenosis or hardening and narrowing of that valve, it makes it difficult because it won't open up all the way. Makes it difficult for the blood to flow. Now, aortic regurgitation, which is sometimes called aortic insufficiency, and this can be graded anywhere from trace amount of regurgitation to severe amount of regurgitation. And it can change. That was a new one for me. Unlike aneurysms that tend to grow, they do not get smaller, they don't shrink. An insufficiency can actually go from trace to moderate back to trace. If you have high blood pressure, it could go up to, it can go from mild to moderate, it can go back down. A lot of different variables that can happen with your aortic valve. I am not a medical professional. I'm simply repeating the things that we have on all of our videos when we've interviewed cardiologists and surgeons. Again, so aortic regurgitation, sometimes called its insufficiency. This is when the aortic valve doesn't close tightly, which causes some of the blood to leak backwards instead of going forward. That's regurgitating. If you think about GERD, gastric regurgitation, you have acids, or sometimes you ate a really big meal, and instead of it working its way through the intestine, it comes back up your throat. It's like basically the same concept. You're just going to have some blood flow going back into the heart instead of being able to go forward through the body. Symptoms can be similar to that of stenosis, including chest pain and difficulty exercising. So let's see if we can get a good picture here. Normal valve operation, everything's moving through the valve from the left chamber of the heart. This is what leakage looks like. You have some backflow, goes back into the heart, okay? By a certain age, I think most people tend to have trace amounts of regurgitation, probably in your mitral valve, your pulmonary, this would be normal, not anything to be concerned about depending upon any symptoms. And it's a good time to have a conversation with your physician if these types of results come back from, let's say, an echo or a CT scan. All right, bicuspid aortic valve. This would not be a disease necessarily. It's not something you just obtain. This is going to be with you from birth. You're probably not going to know about it until you have an echo, because you're having a test done in preparation of a surgery. Maybe you find out about it because someone in your family had an aortic aneurysm or dissection, and you went for your echo just to be checked out, and you found out, oh, look, I have a bicuspid valve. There are some issues that can potentially happen when you have a bicuspid valve. Again, that is with you since birth. That's congenital, and that would be considered a heart defect. So again, bicuspid means 2 leaflets instead of 3. The body is an amazing thing. And in order for your valves to work effectively from the start, you need to have 3 leaflets. It's just the way we were built. I don't understand why. I don't know why 2 doesn't work as good as 3, but it doesn't. So 2 leaflets now have to try to do the job that 3 do in keeping something closed. And when you only have 2, or you have 1, or even if you have 4, it makes the valves more susceptible to wear and tear. And individuals with a bicuspid aortic valve are more likely to develop stenosis or hardening or regurgitation earlier in life than somebody else. And again, when you have those problems, you're more at risk for developing an aortic aneurysm, therefore more at risk for developing or enduring an aortic dissection. See how all this goes? It's all connected. It's all connected. Again, normal valve, 3 cusps, 3 leaflets. There we go. Bicuspid has 2. To me, I don't understand why it doesn't work as well. But again, they're saying it makes the valve have to work a little bit harder than having 3. This is just the way it is. And this is the area, again, where these mechanics happen. Diagnosis and management. So your doctor can actually order a variety of tests to review and look at the aortic valve, measure its size and its function, and identify if there are problems of tightness, which would be stenosis, or leakiness, which is regurgitation, or leaflet abnormalities, which would be bicuspid or a different type of cusp situation. And some of the common tests that are actually ordered would be an echocardiogram, could be a CT scan, could also be an EKG. And we're actually going to talk about this because this was in another post during this week, last week. Okay, the management of aortic valve disease actually depends upon so many different factors. This would include your age, the severity of stenosis or regurgitation, and any vascular anomalies or any issues in the anatomy. Your doctor is actually going to take an in-depth look at your history and recommend either conservative, which would just be medical treatment, medication, stuff like that, which might help optimize your valve function. And that would be, an appropriate type of treatment. Again, if you're having blood pressure issues, they obviously going to want to bring down that blood pressure and your heart rate to help delay any significant treatment plans with that valve. But if severe stenosis or regurgitation develops, the treatment is usually aortic valve replacement. Okay, and that could either be through open heart surgery or newer technologies such as a transcatheter aortic valve replacement or TAVR, transcatheter aortic valve replacement. In these kinds of surgeries, a really small cut is made in your groin, your shoulder, or it can be in your neck, and a small tube-like catheter is used to deliver and deploy this aortic valve. It's crazy to me that somebody can do that. Go right up into your groin, let's say, and poof, let out this brand new valve that just kind of goes right into your own valve. It doesn't replace it. Just boop, there it is, and it just starts functioning and keeps everything held together. Well, it actually could replace your valve, but it still goes in without the need of it being open heart. Like this is all scientific stuff to me, like really like stuff you watched back in the 50s kind of things are coming to life now. So here it is. Here's your TAVR placement. So here's some of the stenosis that's happening. Here you go. You see the calcification, you see the fatty deposits, the hardening, and they're going to put a catheter, goes in, and they deploy this valve. It's a valve replacement right there. Oh, they kind of open it up and then pull whatever catheter out, and it just sits there. And there it is. It's amazing. There is a look at what the valve looks like. Lots of looks like stitching that's going to have to go on. This is an open heart procedure situation. I know that they typically do open if there's going to be an aneurysm involved, and they may want to get rid of that aneurysm as well. But there's so many factors that go into determining what kind of surgery if you need it. And then there's a million and one factors that go into what kind of valve you might want. But so surgery or transcatheter valve replacement, they're going to figure out what it is to ensure long-term valve function because nobody wants to go through this more than once. Okay, so there's a lot of links here that give you treatment options, plans, the whole 9 yards. You want to check those out. It's a lot to digest. I get it, but like you never realized how important that one little valve is, right? And it's pretty important to this community because if you have an issue with the valve, that could potentially impact your aorta, and that opens a massive can of worms. So check it out. Let us know what you think. This is to be used as a conversation point between yourself and your physician if you're having any valve issues. So that's Aorta Valve 101. There you go.